when you sit, your foot is constantly moving. If you always are like messing with your hands or biting your nails or in your own head because your inner dialogue is negative, what alcohol does is it drops the prefrontal cortex so that the judgment of yourself lowers. Drinking the alcohol, which can totally shut down the prefrontal cortex, which is unique to humans, can definitely put you more at peace. But also, you're never dealing with that inner dialogue, that inner voice. You're simply muting it with alcohol. If you continue on that way, then that inner voice can become louder, and then you'll require more alcohol to extinguish it. Also, alcohol is a drug where you rapidly increase tolerance. And then the biggest deal is that it disrupts the GABA system in the brain, meaning so that more alcohol usage, more when you're not drinking, more anxiety, and then the craving for alcohol will go up because you'll have racing thoughts. You won't be able to settle yourself without alcohol. And so people can live fine for a few weeks, a few months unsettled even. I mean, there's tons of people that are like, I gotta take a break from alcohol. I'm not drinking for this month. And then, they can make it through a month of high anxiety. But as soon as they made it to their 30-day goal, they're like, we gotta extinguish this prefrontal cortex in a hurry because this was a tough month, right? Talking about the GABA system in the brain, GABA is the brakes for your neurons. So your neurons have dendrites which connect. So, the neuron connections in one's brain vary a lot in people. There's different paths through the brain to control, to have motor skills. There's different paths, thought processes, there's different ways through the brain. GABA, what it does is it puts the brakes on the speed of transmission between the neurons. When you drink alcohol or consume benzodiazepines, it's recognized by the body as synthetic GABA. So it's the body's like, oh, we don't need GABA because we've got alcohol or benzodiazepines. This substance is putting brakes on the neurons. If we put any more brakes on the neurons, we're going to be too depressed. We need more brain function. You're consuming things that are lowering brain function. So the body is like, we got to keep this brain function up because we got stuff to do. So then when not under the influence of a benzodiazepine, which is Xanax, gabapentin, Valium, or alcohol. A lot of people call benzodiazepines alcohol in a pill because it acts on the same systems of the brain. Then there's no GABA, so now all of the neurons are firing too fast. So they have racing thoughts, they're not able to settle, they'll have a fast foot, they won't be able to sit still, they'll always have to, be in action. So you can see why this is the sanctioned drug for humanity, because you're not settled, so you're not in your presence, but you have this anxious energy, so you have to constantly be in motion. So it's like, what's the next thing to do? What's the next thing to do? Instead of figuring out what you want to do or what you need to do for your presence, for your soul, right? You're in this fight or flight, agitated state because you're not making GABA. And why you're not making GABA is because, again, the brain doesn't want to depress itself more or slow itself down more. And alcohol destroys the gut microbiome, which is where you absorb the GABA. So the GABA is absorbed through the gut, and it travels up the vagus nerve to the brain. it takes 2 weeks for it to get to the brain. So this is why when people take antibiotics, 2 weeks later they feel like garbage after they're off the antibiotics, because it disrupted the GABA system in the brain. This is why people will suffer from a little bout of depression after consuming a course of antibiotics. But because it comes after, because they have enough GABA in their brain, if they're not a drinker, not a benzo head, they don't correlate that it's the antibiotics that wrecked the GABA system, because it happens a period of time after. So the reason to not do alcohol is because it is, I think, of utmost importance to be able to settle down your human, because we're human beings. We're human, which is an animal, and then we're a being of higher consciousness. You have to settle the animal. The human is our animal that our higher consciousness inhabits. So if you're taking substances that make it difficult to settle your human, meaning difficult for you to sit still, difficult for you to not have racing thoughts, you're making it harder on yourself to settle. So if you really want to figure out what your presence is and who you are, and figure out who you are, alcohol is a major roadblock to that. Because yes, while on it, you can be settled and calm, but you're not working with the full capacity of your brain either. It's settled via an artificial chemical, and the body, because it recognizes it as a poison, processes it as fast as it can. This is why some people feel the effects of a hangover, an hour to an hour and a half after their first drink, if they don't have another one. This is why you have to keep drinking, because the body processes it pretty fast. Also, it's a 3-day hangover. They have proven that it's a 3-day hangover. It's 3 days before the waste products of alcohol leave your body. So if you're drinking every day or 5 days a week, you never spend a day of life without formaldehyde in your body, because one of the waste products is formaldehyde, which literally is pickling people. It's the number one cause of cancer, which is very hidden, but alcohol is the number one cause of cancer. It just raises total body inflammation everywhere, brain, body, destroys the gut microbiome so you don't get as many nutrients from your food, causes insulin resistance because it's burnt sugar. That's all alcohol is burnt sugar. So it has all the negatives of sugar plus more. So it's the same thing as consuming high amounts of sugar. And they don't have to label calories on alcohol, and they don't have to label calories that come from alcohol. So even if a liquor manufacturer talks about the caloric content, they don't have to include the alcohol sugars, only the additional sugars. You don't have to count the sugar alcohols, because it's alcohol. Even though it's still a sugar, it's burnt sugar. I think not consuming alcohol now I'm coming up on like 10 years-ish. And I didn't quit because I had an alcohol problem. I wasn't drinking very often. I quit just because it was boring. And maybe I wouldn't find it boring if I wasn't in a city that drinks too much, like Nashville, because there's just people were so drunk everywhere that you couldn't carry on an intellectually interesting conversation was not possible. And then stimulants go hand in hand with alcohol, because the purpose, I think the main draw to alcohol is dropping the prefrontal cortex, which is the critic. So it drops the critic. So then all of the self-hate, the self-doubt, all the judgment, because in America we're really trained to really use our judgment tool everywhere. Judge what somebody's wearing, judge whatever. And then of course, because that's the sharpest tool, that's the most commonly sharpened tool, that's what gets turned on oneself. But dropping the prefrontal cortex drops that. So that's why people like drinking so much.